Good evening. Welcome to the pilot episode of Incontext. Thank you very much for clicking. Thank you very much for watching. And I sincerely hope that I would be able to at least share some information that you may find valuable and useful. I hope. I hope. Well, this is an experiment since I have a little more time. I'm spending I'm spending it researching and learning uh, new skills. I'm doing editing now. So I tried to record this. Today is Sunday, May 22nd, 8:16. There's no light, there's no power. So I may not be able to upload this today. So I picked a topic. I think it's a great way to start. This is Group Psychology and the Analysis of the Ego by Sigmund Freud. I won't be dwelling too much on the written text. It's available out there. It's a wonderful read, but you have to look at context. You'd have to look at like a more recent application of the text. Everything is relevant, even from the past, just depends on the usage and context of the information. Nothing can be considered as passe. It's always relevant depending on how you're looking at it and how you're using it. So, this was published in 1921, a year after his essay, Beyond the Pleasure Principle. In some ways, this is a view of the world seen through Freud's new lens. His perception has clearly shifted after the last essay he has published. And we're seeing the transformation of his perception about ego, libidinal influences, etc. So why should we bother with this? Why would this still be relevant 100 years after the fact? Um, let's try to find out together.
Everything that follows is a result of what you see here. You must ask the right questions.
Tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. Don't go out anymore. We sit in the house and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller and all we say is please at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Never say anything, just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. Got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
And here we go.
I did pick a few topics to replace basically the chapters that you have here, and it clearly shows relevance. Let's start with the power of belonging. So, what makes us overpowered by the charged emotions of the crowd? Let's say losing ourselves as we are enchanted by a collective self. What does it mean to be stripped of individuality? I think we need not have to go back too far to find prime examples of dissenting masses clawing at each other against a perceived enemy. Emotions run high as personal opinions are being paved as facts, easily cemented, especially through the echo chambers of social media and through filtered algorithms designed for maximum engagement. Inflaming topics are endorsed more frequently and reinforced by skewed perspectives that are made agreeable, especially fueled by confirmation bias, where facts are ignored to keep the existing idea to be true, even even though it won't hold under thorough scrutiny. Even if you just scratch the surface, it'll break apart. Like the whole argument will break apart. But still, people still firmly believe in it. Flat Earth, right? I could be wrong. Again, I'm not an expert, I'm just a guy recording stuff. The individual cannot be far removed from the collective. Is the social instinct so far deeply ingrained, or is it just like not too far removed? I firmly believe we're probably overlooking something very critical, a very critical factor. We're getting too picky about the information. We're getting too picky about where the information is coming from, or the influence rather is coming from. We may be too focused on like a deep dive. Sometimes we have to step back and see a bigger picture. Are we forgetting the function of the family, like the profound effect of a family dynamic? It may be genetic, it may be like ingrained into your genes, but you will be far more affected by more recent things. It will be far more reinforced if it's a constant exposure like your family. So these are one of the questions I think Freud, in one way or the other, posted when he did this over Le Bon's theory. Le Bon is also a social scientist as well as a psychologist, and he's like the person Freud is answering to when he wrote this book. He's basically counter arguing with Le Bon's work. So now, let's not forget the very power of family, the first exposure we have to a larger community, like how the dynamics of the family affect your way of perception, your way of dealing with things and dealing with people. Because it really teaches us very profound human dynamics, interaction dynamics. How do we relate? How do we understand hierarchies? How we understand our position? How we evolve ourselves to have a better relationship, communicative relationship? And how will we be able to properly elucidate our points? How can we explain ourselves? Let's not forget the power of family over that. We've been too focused or too busy with a lot of things. We're forgetting our roles in a family. So I might be digressing, but we'll move further. The herd mind. I think this may sound sinister, but I believe it's not far removed from the truth. They say the higher the emotion, the intellect regresses far below it. So to find like the best example we can all relate to, I don't think we have to like go too far. Again, we are all a collective of individual atoms, cells, organs, everything in between. And we are formed from this collective. It has a singular objective: keep the being, the organism, you, alive. Everything in your body is working to keep you alive. Sometimes it's trying to kill you, but it's working for that purpose. Now it's the same as a collective mind. Um, they are banded together to pursue a goal, support an ideal, a philosophy, let's say a person, up to a certain fanatical degree, as if possessed by the cause itself that they are pursuing. And sometimes it is said that they are enchanted by the aura of meaning. And of course, who isn't? Who wouldn't be overpowered by a sense of purpose, something higher than yourself? So this is also one of the things we have to consider if you're serving a bigger cause. But what is the cause really for? right? So we'll get into more details of that maybe later. Now, this is not limited to political groups only. It's found everywhere, basically. Organizations, schools, churches, military institutions, fraternities, etc. As long as it's a collective of people, you will see this happen. Now, if exposed too long, let's say, in this atmosphere, the individual most often than not has, through time, through exposure, through indoctrination, has willingly stripped himself naked of his own reasoning. He starts to lose his individuality. He takes on the colors. He takes on the attitudes also. And then most often than not, the replies would be basically the same for each member or each individual in this group. They would have, I would term, canned responses. So I think these are very critical things we have to notice. That are they all saying the same thing? Are they all coming from like the same playbook or the same handbook? Because basically that's what you'll notice. That's what you'll see. Now they start to look all basically the same. And then when I say lose their conscience, I use it in the context of always being in the right. You can't be wrong. If you're this person we're talking about, you can't be wrong. You're right. Regardless of situation, regardless of the argument, you are always right. Now, if you're already in that situation, I think you need to step back and try to see where the other side is coming from. And this is very, very dangerous. And if you're not viewing, if you're no longer considering any possibility of being wrong in any sense, I think the uninhibited instinctual response that is usually restrained, let's say violence, anger, any basal instinctual response is going to be heightened. You're going to be irritable a lot quicker. These are the signs. You're getting a lot more irritable when someone's trying to like explain something else or show a different side. When you start to react immediately out of spite or out of anger, then I think, like I mentioned earlier, you're going down a slippy slope. Now, if we go back to that, usually individuals, of course, individuals don't react out of high intense emotions immediately. Unlike the crowd, that's what we're trying to put together. Under the anonymity of the crowd, as we can always see, people tend to speak out of line, or people tend to speak with high voices or get rowdy immediately. It's very easy to spark a volatile crowd. It doesn't take too much. Words are less considered. Harsh tones, aggressive behaviors, and attitudes are in the forefront. Now, let us not leave behind the critical observations and understanding of why, what, and who are we really doing this for, right? If let's say we talk about nationality, let us not misrepresent our country by being too overly aggressive or being overly too violent and things like that. Soccer matches would be a wonderful example. They get overzealous about their team. I think there was a riot somewhere, I think in Madrid, that happened because of the team losing, or was that Colombia? I can't remember exactly. So we can see examples of this in everyday life, in everyday contexts. And it's not hard to see this when we start looking for it. Now, are we in a state of hypnotic trance? Are we still guided by our own will? This is a very critical question we have to ask if we are participating in a certain rally or in a certain organization or group. So we'll move on to trial by publicity. Now, the power of words and thoughts have been amplified by 1,000-fold, especially in the advent of social media or mass media technology. It hasn't been this powerful since the dawn of radio, television, or even the written word, printed media. I think it started, let's say, a gossip, malicious as it may seem, but we are all superstitious in some form or the other. Like a glowing, moving light, like some burning bush in the old, would never be wrong. Like speak ill of anyone innocent. This is a glowing source of light, right? Images flashing anytime, anywhere, right? It's easier instead of reading the books, right? And then if this thread that you're following is part of an algorithm, then you can be fed exactly only what they think you need to know. I hope I can touch. I hope I'd still have enough time on it because I'd love to add. I don't know if I'd be allowed to, but I'd love to add videos of, or maybe I'll just read the transcript of the investigation for Facebook about the algorithm being used to manipulate public opinion. And I believe a mass killing happened because of that. So now if we add personal opinion to words carefully crafted and designed to tug on like strings of emotion and mass discontent. Let's say there's already a group of people that's in discontent, and then they're also like rallying behind the very slow wheels of progress, process, justice. If there's already a rife situation of hunger, let's say in public opinion or public attention, don't you think fear can be used as a great motivator, since we all have that deep-seated need to survive? Like it could either be conscious or unconscious. If you're being threatened, if you feel threatened because of what's being fed to you 24/7, 24 hours every single day, it will warp, it will start to change your reality. It's been only 2 years, remember? I don't think it's too easy to forget what happened in the last 2 years. For me, the truth can be revealed or concealed, even manipulated over time to appear something different if clothed in lies. But the truth is naked as we are vulnerable. The truth needs to be said as is. Try to listen to other people's messages. If there's too many words being used, it may be shifting your attention to something else, using the truth as a hook to lead you into a different thought. So what if there is a way to, let's say, weaponize thoughts? Let's say basic impulses and drives we are all carrying within it. Again, we did not go too far in the past to see examples of this, but in the past, we can see the true power of influence over a larger context. Like from the Crusades to the World Wars up to the War in Terror. Perception is key for mass support to war. Doesn't take too much to get everyone rallying behind someone. I think the best example for using media or mass media to lead people into supporting a war, let's say an unjust war, would be the Iraq War. The US was attacked by Al Qaeda, but they attacked not Afghanistan immediately. They did eventually, but they started with Iraq. Why? There was weapons of mass destruction. Where? They never found it. So I don't know. But the news was in the forefront of that. It was always in a cycle of continuous churning of information, news, blah, 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 blah. It was everywhere. People were saturated by it. So when the Congress asked for approval from the people, they got it. They got unanimous support, at least in some ways, unanimous. We can see the power of perception play a key role in almost anything and everything that we do. That's why we have to be very careful of our attention. Be very careful what you pay attention to. Now, social media and perception engineering, a trend contagion. So by definition, from merriam-webster.com, trends are movement in a particular direction. A tendency implies an inclination, sometimes amounting to an impelling force. A general tendency towards an applied general direction maintained by winding or irregular force. Drift within the same usage may apply to a tendency determined by external forces. The drift of the population away from large cities, like an example, it may apply to an underlying or obscure trend of meaning or discord. Got the drift of her argument, something to that effect. So it stresses on a clearly perceptible direction and continuous undeviating course. Contagion, I think we can understand, is a transmission of disease by direct or indirect contact from the source. So an idea, if you get infected by the idea, you spread the idea, like, share, subscribe, right? So if I'm churning out information, if I'm churning out biased information, but you relate to it, let's just say you're not aware of an agenda behind what I do. If you get hooked into it, and then you, of course, want to share what you feel, how what you're learning, things like that. When it spreads, you've become the vector of a thought virus. So these are a few things that I think relates to this greatly. So what in real life can be designed? I mean, like a movie, orchestrated to push a particular agenda, like movie ads, news ads, or whatever. You will see that sound, sights, colors are practically so well designed and well crafted to influence your emotional response. Now that's perception engineering. Anyone and everyone can be turned against one particular direction under the right situation, under the right context. So I think I'm not alone in saying that ideas can be mind viruses given under the right circumstances. Like timing, like any joke is key for the punchline to hit and make the audience laugh. I mean, it's not too much, I think, to see. As every note relates to a certain emotion, so does color and images. Let's say babies, what do you immediately come into mind? What emotion that it automatically elicits from you? And then the color, red, what does it denote to you? How do you see that? Now, there are clear definitions of that, like E minor. E minor is a key that usually carries grief, mournfulness, or restlessness. So if all used in cohesion of a message, this can be used as a very powerful weapon in terms of persuasive power, much like words used by charismatic individuals that can be groomed, cultivated to represent a particular group, organization, movement, even a philosophy altogether. So we have to be very careful of that because now it's a lot easier. It's not that hard to groom someone like from the get-go. Because you can follow someone's growth, like from a kid to an adult in the internet without meeting them personally. They can be powerful. And how do you really know that this person is not just reading off of a script, or this person is not merely saying words written for him? Does he really mean what he's saying? So we have to be very careful of these things. Who do we give our attention to? What is it really that we want? So there are, of course, no limit to the uses of both good and bad. Like I said, like anything else, it's inert in its base form. Only the intent of its user will determine the value for either side. Now, we are already well aware that there is an economy based on this. Market values rise and fall for companies, in even countries and individuals that have been in the space of what has been coined prestige economy. Now, status and power, usually the economics of prestige. Le Bon described the group mind to be credulous and open to influence. A group is extraordinarily credulous and open to influence. It has no critical faculty, and the improbable does not exist for it. It thinks in images which call one another up by association, just as they arise with individuals in state of free imagination, and whose agreement with reality is never checked by any reasonable function. This is page 15, Group Psychology and the Analysis of the Ego. Now, as individuals, we are in some way required to see the abstract ironies and processes of relevance, let's say gray areas, that we are supposed to in daily life. Now, however, as we gravitate towards and orbit closer and closer to the group thought, we are slowly locked to a far more rigid point of view that prevents us from processing further nuances, context that usually is accepted in affirmation of our chosen fears. So now, we're making decisions for appearances. We're making choices for approval. Is that what you're going to do? Is that what you're doing? Is that where you're getting led into? So, now, they say the building blocks of this dynamics are fairly the same as any organism, at least it may appear overcomplicated, but by nuances only. Any group that is bonded to function, like, let's say, colonies of ants or wolves in a pack, they will operate under the same formula. Like an effective organization, even a well-functioning machine, everyone has a part to play, and you need to stick to your role. Now, it may only be motivation that differs, but still similar in many ways. Now, we'll touch on a separate subject, but I think it's basically the same. However, it may not be ringing a bell. This is social stratification. So we can't discuss the prestige economy without at least touching on social stratification. So in a nutshell, social stratification is how society ranks people in hierarchy. They say access to limited resources, skills, or incentives. These are only a few of the drives, some say, that affect directly the roles we take in society, whether we like it or not. It could be limited to, or far broader because of, limited to your race, your color, your religion, your creed, whatever. So that could be limited to under these pretexts. I think it's not too far long ago, we saw India having a caste system. We can even see women not being able to vote. So it wasn't this long ago that these situations are predominant. We can still see them in effect in other countries today. So these are hard facts that we have to reevaluate. Are we still following that? Are we still in that trap? Are we still in that hierarchy? I don't know. Maybe depending on how you read your position in that hierarchy and how you respond to it. Some people say access to limited resources, let's say skills, incentives, are given to the bourgeoisie, like the higher class. They're the ones that will have all the opportunities or the chances. But I don't think they may have a foot on the door, but you still can't succeed if you don't have half a fucking head, right? So you can get into the door, but you can only go so far without the right tools. So if you are equipped, if you are willing to parse your time through the process, it may take longer, but if you work smarter, I don't think it may take too long. But we don't know. So also depending on like the level of competence that you have. We could be in a meritocracy or something else, but I think most companies are still in a meritocracy. So if you do good, you get rewarded for it. Just depending on how you perform. So we'll see. Moving back to the prestige economy, I think it begins with, am I better than this person? Like this internal, this very simple question we ask ourselves in every interaction when we get to meet someone for the first time or whatnot. When that hits you, I'm better than this person. Am I better than this person? When you try to consider that, you're formulating the hierarchy. You're trying to gauge your situation. You're trying to gauge your position. And then you're already strategizing to leverage that information. Is that good? Is that bad? Depends on usage and context. Relating to position, recognition, and titles in prestige economy, I'd like to just ask, do you make in some way, one way or the other, constant compromises in what you say or do in order to maintain a perceived image of yourself to yourself and or to everyone else? Why are you doing that? Why do you have to compromise yourself, your ideals, your beliefs, your core values? Is that really necessary? I'm just asking these questions. So I hope you don't mind. I hope you don't get offended. That is not my intent here. Right. Now we'll just pause for here for now. Let me just see if this will work. Please let me know if this is something that you like or you would like me to move away from this. We'll see. So I'll continue on next week or yeah, next week. I'll continue on next week. Thank you very much. Again, please remember life is about making choices. Have a wonderful and safe rest of your day.